JD. Welcome to my channel. What do I have here today? On the bench is a very beautiful Hamilton pocket watch. So today we're going to disassemble this very beautiful Hamilton pocket watch, and we are going to first test it to see how it runs before disassembly. So let's get on with that test. So first thing I need to do is get a little bit of data about this pocket watch. So this is a 21 jewel railroad grade Hamilton pocket watch. It's been adjusted to 5 positions, as it says right here. It has a serial number, and we're going to look that up. So it is a double roller pocket watch. The other thing that is interesting about this watch is that the jewel settings rather are raised jewel settings, and these are normally gold raised jewel settings, which means that the actual center wheel might be a gold filled center wheel, gold plated center wheel, and the other jewel settings are gold as well. So these gold settings are likely, I'm going to guess 9 karat gold settings, so maybe 14, but I'm going to guess 9. So we're going to look this up so I don't have to guess anymore and get on with this. Alrighty then, so this is a Hamilton pocket watch, Lancaster, Pennsylvania. There's a movement serial number here, 2485134, grade 992. It is a Model 2. Estimated production year is 1928 of this watch. The run quantity was 13,000 of these watches, which is not a lot. And the run model, or the grade model run, is 162 to 175. Those are the grades of the watch. The total production of this watch, this is 13,000, was one run, so 447,200. Remember, everybody used pocket watches in those days, so the runs were somewhere between $250,000 to $1 million sometimes. So it's a size 16S, which is one down from the largest size, which is 18. 21 jewels. The jewels are ruby and sapphire jewels, and these were not synthetic. These were ruby and sapphire. Settings are gold, so they're gold settings, screw set settings. I've made settings like this before. Open face configuration, movement finish is nickel itself, and it's got a second pattern. There's a bar as well. And the movement setting is a lever setting, which means it's lever set. You pull a lever out on the side to set the watch, and you push the lever back in to wind it. And it is a 3/4 plate, which is a lot easier to work with than a full plate. Double roller, yes. And then that means the impulse jewel is protected by a double roller, so the roller ensures that when it's going back and forth, that the actual safety dart that's on the pallet fork doesn't ride outside of where it should for the impulse jewel to go into the mouth of the pallet fork. Try to explain that quickly. It's a going barrel. Center wheel is gold. See, look at that, I was right. Reed regulator, you saw the regulator hairspring, Breguet. And the pallet jewel material is sapphire, right? So that's the pallet jewel I talked about earlier. Dial is a double sunk dial, so the main dial is on top. The second dial is sunk down a bit. So it is adjusted to 5 positions. It's adjusted to temperature and isochronism, and the tolerances are right here. Plus or minus 6 seconds per day, I think. Plus or minus 10 seconds average of plus 3 to 6 seconds per day, and the temperature average is plus or minus 6 seconds per day. So it's a railroad grade watch. Let me just go down. I think you were missing some of that. It is a railroad grade watch. There are the tolerances there, and it's got the dial feet locations there on the watch, and that's it. So this is the pocket watch. Very nice 992 pocket watch. Try to get the right shine on here, but you can see the 992 marking on the pocket watch right here, and the double roller marking right beside it right here, and 21 jewels, and down here it says adjusted to 5 positions, and there's the serial number, right? So that's the pocket watch we're going to disassemble today, but first we're going to test and see how well this thing runs. So contrary to popular belief, you do have to wind a watch in order to get it running. And let's get a little bit of a wind on this watch and see if we can get this thing running. And then of course I've got to take the wind off the watch for disassembly. Just move that back and forth a bit, and that should start the watch off. So this is a watch that requires servicing, and only because the gentleman that owns it says it doesn't keep time very well at all. So that's one reason to service a watch. So a watch that's working fully probably doesn't need servicing unless it's hasn't been serviced in a long time and the oil's kind of dried up on the watch. And that could cause the pivots to wear in the jewel settings. So there we go, that's fully wound. I wound that to the full position right now, so I just need to let this settle for a few seconds to enable for it to be able to test it properly. Just let it settle in for a few seconds. So to set my Timegrapher up properly, which is a Witchy 1900 Timegrapher, I need to know my lift angle, and the lift angle for the Hamilton 992 is 48. And I'm trying to hold this thing steady, but I've got a lift angle of 48 set and the auto beat set for detecting the beat of the watch. And let's just get this thing in a going position. I'm doing this with face up first. So face up means I've got it face up. Alright folks, there's the data. So you've got a rate of +6, which isn't bad. Amplitude's not too bad at 261. The beat error is ridiculous. It's 5, so that's not good. Lift angle is 48. The gain's fine on this, but look at the separation of those two lines. So you want to service this watch to get those lines back together again, get that beat error working well, and which might mean that when we reinstall the collet, we may have to rotate the hairspring collet slightly to get that beat error working well. And as you can see in crown up position, its amplitude dropped significantly to 201, and its rate is actually -124, and the beat error is now 6.7. Oh my god, that's quite the beat error we've got here. So we've got probably something going on with this watch. So that's in crown up position. I'll do face down and that's it. And that's what crown up position looks like. And of course you see some 0W20 lathe oil right there. There you go folks, and lots of stuff in my drawers here to get easy access. But that's crown up position. So here we have crown left position. And in crown left position we're looking at +3 seconds, an amplitude of 213, not great, and then a beat error of course of 6.6. Still has a problem here. And this is in face down position, and I'm going to do a live scan. Here we go, face down position, live, and right up here. And it looks like we have 26 seconds per day plus 26 amplitudes improved, and the beat error is still poor at 5.6 milliseconds. So we got work to do on this watch. So to take this watch apart, the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of this chain. Alright, we just have to take this chain here and put your finger down, your thumb down here, and then push this chain out of position here and try not to scratch the watch at all, which I did not. And here is the watch chain. It's a very beautiful watch chain. I'm not sure if it's a vintage one, but it's a nice one. So I think it is vintage just because of the look here. So you got to be very careful with this and put it aside. And now you have the watch in this position. You need to take the power off the watch in order to actually service it properly. So I need to take the back off here, and this is a watch case. It's got a dent in it, and the owner told me, his name is Rick, he said he tried to remove that dent, but it looks like it's a pretty deep looking kind of a cut in the back, which is not good. And you want to take the power off the watch. You should either get yourself a piece of pegwood to support doing that, or just use your tweezers if you've got brass tweezers. I come from the International School of Used Pegwood. So there we go. So all you do is take the pegwood, and there's a click here, and you just have to put the pegwood on the inside of the click here and just get it out of the way, and just roll the watch back with your fingertips. So you're using your thumb and your finger and keeping the friction on here, and you're just rolling that back, and that'll just roll all the way back. A pocket watch typically has around 7 turns to it on the mainspring barrel. So as you do this, just you don't have to remind yourself of how many turns the mainspring barrel has, but you can count them if you want, if you're totally bored, or you can just do it and not say a darn thing. I do like to service watches while I'm listening to the radio. Making the videos is a good thing for everyone watching, but it's for me, it's chatting a lot, but I need to distract myself by listening to the radio. Now, if I listen to the radio while I'm servicing the watch, then the YouTube will penalize me, and they'll say I've got a copyright infringement, which is no good. I don't know why they do that, but so I can't listen to the radio while I'm servicing watches. Boo earns. So there we go. It's all the way down. Let go of the crown, and you can see that the balance is starting to stop. So it's starting to stop. What does that mean? So now what I want to do here is get rid of those hands first. So I'm going to put the case back on the watch, and I want to remove the hands from the watch so they're safe. And to do that, I'm having fun getting the case back on. Say that twice. And there we go. That's on there. I'm only wearing one glove here because we're washing this watch anyway. So I'll take the watch apart here, the top off the watch. This is the crystal, and this is the bezel for the crystal, and this is lever set, which means I take my fingernail, which you see that I got long fingernails from playing guitar, but they're pretty handy for watchmaking, and even though sometimes they look disgusting. So, and I always turn the hands in the same direction they're supposed to turn. Now, that's just me. Probably shouldn't matter, but I do it this way. That way I don't force any gears in the wrong direction. It's supposed to turn this way, so we might as well turn it this way. So here I'll line the watch up like this, and you'll see that it's slightly off from the 12, but not too bad, not too shabby, as they say. And now I want to protect that face before I remove the hand, so I need to get myself a piece of plastic to protect the face. I've got all kinds of hand removers, but the ones I like best, that seem to work the best and don't have the possibility of ruining the dial, are these big wide ones here. So these ones here I picked off on the internet somewhere, I can't remember, but they're really wide, and that allows me to get underneath the actual hands like this, and it gives me the width to spread the actual force to a wider area of the dial, right? So I don't need to have the grooved part in there. I should typically offset them slightly like that, and then you pull upward like this, and the hands will come right off. And these are the hands. You can grab a piece of Rodico to pick them up, or you can use your tweezers very lightly, take the hands and then put them aside. So this is what I've just done. And then the second hand is an interesting little guy. So I've got these other hand levers here that are very small, and it's actually, you can actually use this same piece of plastic to get this second hand's lever off. Sometimes I've had to use a screwdriver to get it off, but you just get in like this, allow it to wrinkle a bit, and then pull in like that, and then the lever's straight up like that, and the hand will come off, and there it is. You don't want to destroy or damage the pipe on the hand, because that's so important. You'd have to replace the second hand if you did anything and destroyed that pipe on this. So these are the hands, so they're out of the way now, which is good. While I've got the watch in this position here, I usually do a little work on the dial. I do it either then or after I've reassembled the watch, and I can just clean up the dial a bit with Rodico, and Rodico will pick up all the dirt on the dial. It does a great job, and also it ensures that you're not putting too much pressure on the dial, because the Rodico will bend before the watch will bend. So you're not going to damage the dial by using Rodico, but it's picking up all the smudges here that are on the dial, which is a wonderful thing. You can completely clean a dial up with a little bit of elbow grease and Rodico, and being very cautious about how you're doing it. I typically will stay away from the seconds wheel here, the fourth wheel of the watch. This is the fourth wheel. This pivot here, I'll stay away from that pivot when I'm using the Rodico. You don't want it to get caught on the pivot and bend it in any way. So that would definitely not be good for the watch. Could ruin the watch. So there you go. So that dial is nice and clean right now, looking at that. And you take the dial, move it around so you can see the light, the angles on the light. And when you do that, you can often pick up some other areas that need cleaning. So just do that and move it around, and that's good. I do have some enamel paint that I've used in my own watches in the past to clean them up, but it's good to leave a watch looking very vintage. That's I've heard this from people over the years. So these are the hand removers for the seconds hand. They're very small. I've heard that people prefer to leave a watch looking very vintage rather than trying to make it look brand new again, because it is a vintage watch, so why not make it look vintage? So after I've done that, I'm going to take this here and I'm going to remove the movement from the watch now. So I'm going to get my watch pad out here and put it on my watch pad. So the watch pad I have here is a Bergeron 5395. It's a gel pad. It's very high end. I see a lot of watchmakers out there using the other watch pads that are hard or coarse, but this will not hurt the movement. So I use this gel pad. It's a 5395-75N if you want to be very specific, or you can just play the video. I'd recommend going to get that pad. Now this crystal here, that's plastic. I can tell from years of repairing watches by just tapping it with my guitar fingernails whether that's glass or plastic, and that is definitely plastic. It is a raised crystal. It looks really good, and it's in fairly good condition. It's got a bit of scratches but no gouges in it, so I don't think I'll need to replace this crystal because it looks like it's in very good condition. So I could probably get some scratches out of it, and we'll see if I can do that later. But anyway, that's the crystal. So the watch here, I'll want to take the watch and I want to take the back off the watch and unscrew the movement. So I want to just unscrew the back here and to be able to take out the movement. So first the thing I need to do is remove these case screws, and these are these screws on the side here. There's one case screw here and another case screw here. So the screwdriver, the red one, is actually a little bit too small, and you don't want to have a small screwdriver fit into a long slot on the screw because it likely is going to slip. So you want to get a screwdriver just a little bit bigger. This size is probably good here, and make sure that the screwdrivers have been dressed properly, and just press down with enough force that you can turn that screw without causing a problem. So I turn it until I hear a click, and then once I've heard the click, I know the thread is free, and you just pull that up here and then again put that aside. Or you can play a little bit of mat hockey with it. That's where you try to chase it around the mat, as I was doing 2 seconds ago. It's Canadian mat hockey. So put a little bit of force on it, press down, wait till can you hear that click? Listen here. There, that's the click you want to listen to or hear before you remove the screw. And grab the screw, no mat hockey on that screw. And now you got to make sure, in some of these watches you have to make sure that the crown is pulled out, but this watch is lever set, so it doesn't matter. So you just have to jog the case back like I did, and then you've got it in good position here. So there's the crown and the stem for the watch, and they look like they're pretty good condition. And I'll just put that aside as well. And now I've got the movement here, so the next thing I want to do is strip the face. Although I typically like to get rid of that balance, I'll take the face off first, and I'll take the balance off after that. Now to take the face off, there are what you call dial screws right here, and these dial screws, actually you unscrew them because they hug on to the dial feet that are on the watch. So there's dial feet that you'll see in a second. I try to just back them off a bit. Sometimes they'll fall on the mat, but I try to back them off, but then I'll put them back in a position for watch cleaning. These little buggers are sometimes hard to find, but these are coming out nicely. I've had these dial screws get seized up, which makes it virtually impossible here to get them out, but in this case here they seem to be coming out nicely. Just have to get my screwdriver in here and back that off like that. And then once you've got the screws backed off, there's a high probability you'll be able to get your screwdriver underneath the dial and just lift it up ever so slightly. So you just do that, and turn that and work your way around. And try to use your thumb here on this side here to maintain a gap. This thumb here, just use that to maintain a gap if you can. Sometimes it doesn't work, but often it does. So once you get that gap in place, you're usually able to lift the dial straight up. Harder to do with gloves on, by the way, and I keep telling people that back in the day I don't think they had gloves. So once you've done this, you put it in, you twist it, right? And you get to a point where it doesn't work anymore. Get yourself a larger screwdriver, put it in again and twist it. There we go. So just up your screwdriver size a bit, and that'll help you do this. So you just do that, twist it, and at some point this little baby will let go and let me take it out. So I think it's ready to go. Is that ready to go? Don't force it because you don't want the legs to get broken. There we go. So there's 3 dial feet on here. I did make a video a long time ago about how to solder these dial feet on. I have a dial feet soldering device that I've got from Vietnam of all places. So here's the dial. Looks like it's in fairly good condition. You can see there's a little bit of oil in the dial. Let me lay this watch down here. There's a little bit of oil on the dial right here, which is interesting, which means the previous repaired individual somehow got oil on the upper part of this movement, like used way too much oil on it, because you should not see oil on the dial. It's been transferred from the movement to the dial. So that's kind of a bad thing. And these things, for some reason I just had a brain fart and can't remember the name of them, but these here dial jobby-do thingamajobby doohickeys are used to push basically they push down on the center wheel here, the hour wheel, from this side here, but they're not oiled. So you don't oil these. You just make sure they have a little bit of a bend in them like that, and that way they work perfectly. Let me put that over the dial so you can see the bend. So these are pretty cool. I've got boxes of these things and I resize them, so I may replace this one, or if I throw it into lighter fluid it might get rid of the oil. So there you go. That's what are those things called? We'll figure that out later. So I get the watchmaker's brain farts, they're called. And that's when you get a piece in your hand, you go, I've said this name of this piece a million times, like lift angle, for example. I look at LA and I go, oh, what is LA? So if you look again here, and you see right here, you can see there's oil. There's oil on this. So I'm going to do a close-up of that and just show you the oil. So there's the movement in its position here, and there's the hour wheel you can see on the upper left-hand side of the screen, and you can see that there's oil in that hour wheel. And just in case you didn't believe me, if you look at this, you can see if I move this, let me see if I can do this. This is microscopic view here, and you can see I'm actually pushing the oil. Look at that. So I'm not sure who the watchmaker was, but that is not going to help with the timing of the watch. If a bunch of oil in there, that's an amateur watchmaker has done that job. And so I would take this out here and put that aside. That's for cleaning for later, and put that next to the dial washer. See, I remember the name of the darn thing. And there's the Canon pinion here that I'm going to be removing in a second, and the minute wheel's right next to it. So there's the minute wheel there, and it probably has some leftover oil from here as well. So I just remove that minute wheel. Should come straight up if I just grab that like this. But you can see the oil. As I do this, it's sloshing the oil around. That is crazy. So somebody just threw this darn thing in oil and said, I hope it works perfectly. So I want to get that minute wheel out of there. So to do that, you can usually pick it right up, but this thing is stuck on here because of the oil, right? So I might be able to work a screwdriver underneath here at the same time I'm pulling up on this. There we go. So there's the minute wheel. Take that, put that aside on my mat. Now my mat's all oiled. And sometimes you can grab the Canon pinion and lift it straight up, but I'm going to do a safer way of removing that Canon pinion. So here I've got the Binford 2000 Canon pinion remover. If you got a sense of humor, you know what I'm talking about. So this Canon pinion remover has jaws on the end, and I like to think of these jaws as my Alien versus Predator jaws. You know, in the Alien, the way the mouth came out, and this, you put this over the Canon pinion, and there's double jaws in here. So look at that. That is scary stuff, right? There's a set of jaws on the inside, as you can see, and then a set of jaws on the outside that grab that as well. And that ensures safe removal of the Canon pinion. So now when I take this Canon pinion and I put this over the top, it should remove it nicely. So here I'm going to take this Canon pinion remover here and try to get this thing stationed over the top of this Canon pinion. And the side of these jaws have got to have a clear area to press down so you don't damage anything. So I can do this and put it over like that, and then when I pull down this way like this, it should pull up in the Canon pinion and remove it. There we go. See if I can just drop it on the mat. There we go. And that's the Canon pinion nicely removed from the watch with no pressure. That goes straight up, so there's no angular or sideways pressure or sort of side shake on this pivot, and this is a pivot for the center wheel gear. So I'll just put this Canon pinion out of the way, and as you can see, I've got my parts starting to line up here, and there's a look at the parts all getting lined up on my desk. Now of late I've been debating over this, but of late I've decided not to play or remove these parts here. Now I've done this many times and there's no issue, but I can leave them in place and oil them after. Ever so slightly. The concern I've always had is that when you're removing one of these parts that are like these springs is what I'm really worried about. They're very particular springs, very difficult to get a hold of, and often if these things are damaged in any way, you actually need to buy another 992 movement complete just to get the spring out. So you can criticize my work here, but I don't believe it's going to affect the performance of the watch. So I'm not going to be removing these. I'm admitting it right now. When I'm doing watch work, of course, I have to take all of that apart with a watch. With a pocket watch, I don't believe it affects the performance of the pocket watch. So I don't typically remove this. I used to remove it all the time, but I don't do it anymore. I've talked to other watchmakers who say they're too worried about these vintage watches and one of these parts breaking and causing an issue. So to remove it, you just have to remove these screws, remove this screw, remove that screw. It's not a big deal removing it. It's just a risk that you could actually damage one of these very small springs, and then you have an inoperable watch. The other thing you have to look out for on this watch is that there's the fourth wheel pivot right here, and this pivot sticks out, and you've got to really make sure that this pivot is not in any danger of getting hit or jogged in any way, because it could damage that pivot, and then you've got a whole other problem. You've got to get yourself a Hamilton fourth wheel. So I'm going to put this in a movement holder now, and I have to flip this thing around to remove the balance out of this watch safely. So I use the very famous Myers number 58 movement holder. I'm not sure, I may have made this famous because every time I make a video I tell people how good it is. It's your third hand. Oh, that's my echo. So it's your third hand will hold all kinds of watches regardless of size, shape, or form. They are absolutely right. It's got some instructions on the back, but you'd have to be a total moron to not know how to use this thing. So and this is an original box on it, which is nice, and I figure these movement holders were probably made in the 30s or 40s maybe. So right now this is the movement holder here, and it's got all kinds of different fittings here to allow you to hold all different size movements. So I had this in place to hold I think it was a Tissot watch I was working on, or maybe it was a Zenith. Maybe it was a Zenith watch I worked on. So this is obviously too small for a pocket watch. So you just take these and you strip them out like that. You take it like this, and you can see in that movement holder there are springs here that push up, and these springs that push up hold the movement holder. What will I call those? I got to call it a jobby doohickey. So the jobby doohickey for the movement holders are then held in place. So there's probably a formal name for that. So to put them in, you simply put them in sideways, push down a little bit, and then ride it along like that. And that's how that goes in. So these are the large jobby doohickeys, and there's two of them. And so you do the exact same thing on this side. You find the angle here like that. You push down on that spring that's on the side. You don't have to push much. and then you've got it in place. So that is the Myers number 58 movement holder. I love these things. My favorite movement holder of all times. The other thing that's really good about this movement holder is there's a button on the side here you press, and it detaches the back from the threads here of this big screw. But when you have it in place like this and you turn this, and let's compress my finger a little bit here. So if I take my finger here and I put it in here, I'm trying to get it closer, and I start compressing it, there's a spring inside on this side that ensures that my finger doesn't get completely squished, because the spring moves first. So it's not a direct correlation between the thread movement of this back jobby doohickey with the threads. There's a spring on the inside, and you can tell there's a spring on the inside because when you press here, look at that, there's that spring. So that is the value, because you're not going to crush your watch movement, which you don't want to do. So now let's place the movement into the Myers number 58 movement holder. My third hand. So for work, I work for the department of, how could I have forgotten this? I need to take off the dust cover. So I can't remove this without the dust cover off. I'm hoping that when I screw these screws in, and these are the screws for the dial feet, that the dust cover is out of the way. So there we go, and that is working. So I screw those in and tighten them a little bit, because I don't want to lose these screws inside of the, hang on, let me do this again, inside of the wash machine, right? So because these are small enough to go for a little trip, and I don't want that to happen. So I screw them in nicely so they're not going anywhere, and then I have to work off the fat for all the food I ate at Christmas. No, now I have to work off the dust cover on this. So let's see how we're going to work that off. So just like other things in watchmaking, you need to pry this off a bit. So you need to get your screwdriver in the crack and then move it up. So usually there's a little starting crack here on this thing I can use. Is that right here? Let me think. Is that right here? I'm not sure. It kind of looks like there's something here. I'm going to have to get close now. So it looks like the dust cover actually starts right here where the dial is. It's sort of a cover between these two things here. So I might be able to pry that. There we go. Prise it, I think, is the term. So this is a split dust cover, which is unusual actually. And I'm just sort of going around here, and so given that, I probably didn't have to screw those screws all the way in as much as I did, but I did for the purposes of the cleaning machine. You do not want to lose the dial screws in the cleaning machines. Now, I'm a man of a million screws, so I could probably replace them. So there's the dial, the dust cover for the dial. See, that's the dust cover, and I just put that over with all of my other stuff, and that's exposing the movement now. There's my Myers number 58 movement holder. So I've got this movement here, and I'm just going to place that inside here and see if that fits. And there we go. Not bad. And you'll notice in the Myers number 58 movement holder that this has got a gap here and here, so you don't have to worry about the fourth wheel pivot getting touched by any of this. So it's pretty free, and I'll show you something else with this movement holder that's pretty cool. So when I put it in, I usually put it in so that the balance here and the balance complete here is free of the side of the movement holder. So when I remove the balance, I can get at it without any real problem, right? So once I've got it like this, I can simply turn the screw. If it's too far apart, I could press the button and push in. But now I've turned the screw, and I got to capture that movement. And I know from the tension on the screw here that a little bit of tension, not a lot, and I know it's captured, right? So the other thing you want to do is you got to make sure that you haven't actually squished the lever for the movement here. So, and as I can see, you got to watch for a lever movement. If you can see in there, the lever is right there, so it's free from everything. It's not squished at all, which is a good thing. And usually when I do it this way, the lever is not in danger of being squished. So then I've got the watch in this position here, and I've got to take out the balance. Again, I've said this before, I use the Bergeron 7010 stick here to help me. This is a Bergeron 7010 stick and polyamide plastic stick, very resistant watch tool. It doesn't want to be a watch tool. I think that's what that means. So the reason I like to use a stick is I like to hold the balance down with a little tiny bit of weight, not a lot, just a little tiny bit of weight, while I loosen the screw here. And the reason for that, look at that, that was already loose, so the previous watchmaker did not tighten that screw properly. And I like to put a little bit of pressure on this. It looks like the screw is riding up the plate too, which is also odd. So I'm just a little nervous here, so I might hold it like this so it doesn't rattle around, because the screw doesn't seem to be coming up with the plate. So like that, and then I can actually remove the balance, and I'll tip it to remove it, as you can see in a second. So I do have a movement holder that I produced in the past for both large and small movements. So I'm going to use this movement holder, or the balance holder actually, not the movement holder, so to hold the balance in place. And it should be safer in here than in a other type of balance holder, of which I have many. So now I'm going to take this balance here and grab it like this, and then I'm going to grab the balance from the top here and then just swing it out like that. Now the problem I have in this situation here is that there's a screw in there, and I'm not sure why that screw's in there. So I may actually want to just take this balance and turn it around on its belly so I can examine the screw issue, because this screw should come out, but it looks like the regulator is in the way of the screw, which means I'm not sure what somebody did here, but they kind of screwed up, I think. So I'm going to grab this with my other hand, and I'm going to roll it over, right, like that. And this way, I'm going to lay it down like this, and this way I can have a look at the screw and figure out what the situation is here, because that's not good. I don't like what happened here with that screw. It didn't seem to want to come out. So I'm going to use 2 tweezers here to operate on this particular device. So I'm doing this live, but here's the patient here. So I'm going to take this balance. I'm going to grab it low here. I'm really keeping an eye on the pivots. I may want to take the balance out here before I do this, but I'm really curious why this screw is just sitting there and wasn't able to come out. This makes no sense at all unless they put the wrong size screw in the balance. So I don't like that at all. So what I'm going to do is, it's hard because it's hard to hold the balance in place, and I don't want anything to get damaged here. So I need to unscrew the top here, which would let the stud out, which allowed me to remove the balance. So I may have to just hold it while I'm doing that, because there doesn't seem to be any method of doing this other than just holding it with my hands. So I've got the balance in my hands right now. I'm very carefully turning this around, and I know I've got 2 screws on the top here I would have to loosen. So I'm trying to get in super close here to loosen these screws, and to get the stud out of here, because I need to figure out how to get that balance out. So I'm holding this very carefully, and I'll see if I can actually turn these screws. It's not an easy job because somebody screwed this up. I need another screwdriver here. I had a yellow. I think I need a yellow. Let's grab the yellow. See if that works. I can support the balance a bit, but I don't want to put any pressure that the pivot would cause a problem with the pivot. Okay, there we go. So that's turning, and this one is turning. So there we go. So I just need to loosen this bridge on the top, and that'll release the stud. And once I've got the stud released, then the balance will let go. So I'm just seeing how I can do this the most careful method of doing this. I may just grab it. If it drops down, it's probably not a problem. It's probably the best way of letting it go. But I want to push this thing out. If I can grab it, I'll be able to just bring it up, sort of thing. Kind of like that. Alright, now if I just let this go, it's going to go boing, and then I need to get it out from underneath the regulator pins and drop it down here a bit and just turn that a little. And you don't want, what you don't want is to put any stress on the hairspring. Still having fun here. Now it's just need to ride this up a bit. See, it wants to go back into the slot. Let me turn this around here and put it down. And then lift the whole darn thing up here a bit and move it over. There we go. And now I'm going to see if I can remove this way. See, now it's out of the position here. It should just be able to go up from the regulator pins, but it's because of the way the hairspring is, it doesn't want to release itself. It's that damn previous watchmaker. So let me think here. I got to think this one through because it's in where the regulator pins are, and I just may put this under my microscope to work on it. Yeah, I need to take this. I'm going to take this under my stereo microscope because I just need to ply it just a little bit, but I don't want to touch that hairspring in any manner. So I'm getting out my stereo microscope. So this is my stereo microscope. It's a CARTON stereo microscope, and the make of this thing, I think it's a DSZ70. So DSZ70, and it can get you very close to the parts to do work. Alright, this is actually a video, and I've got a flashlight under my other camera microscope. And if you notice, see if I can point to this, that right here, right underneath there, are the regulator pins. And the outer regulator pin is actually bent. It's bent downwards, squishing the hairspring. So this is why the hairspring or the watch was keeping very poor tolerances and beat error and everything else, because there needed to be a bit of a separation here, like tight but not like this, and this upper regulator pin is actually bent towards the other one and over at an angle just a bit, so squishing that hairspring. That's why I couldn't get the hairspring out. So somebody has really mangled with this watch, and I got to ask, I'm going to email my friend here who sent this to me and say what's going on here, because his name's Rick, and say, Rick, who was playing with this watch, because somebody screwed that up. So now I've got to get a very small screwdriver, something in between those pins, and spread them out a bit in order to get the hairspring removed or released from tension here. So that is an interesting issue. And there's the hairspring out intact, no problem, and with the stud, there it is there. If I grab that and lift it up, there's the hairspring and the stud, and everything is in place nicely, so I don't think there's a problem here at all. Yeah, that's good there. And the pivot on the top looks good, but we'll check that out. We'll be taking this hairspring off this, I believe, to wash it, and I'll mark the position of the hairspring. So that's all good with the balance and hairspring off, and now I'll show you what the problem was. Alright, there's the problem right there. So if you look, I'll try not to touch this, but if you look at this, the upper regulator pin here is pushed in and bent sideways. That is not good, and it was squeezing the hairspring. So the hairspring actually probably couldn't move. It couldn't be regulated. So if the owner or the watchmaker tried to regulate that, that would just push the hairspring and perhaps bend it. I've seen a bent hairspring before, which is not good. So that has to be corrected. These have to be straightened up properly and then put in the right position so they're not squeezing the hairspring too much. I can use a sample hairspring to put in the middle as I'm squeezing it together to make sure that I'm getting a good the good position of the regulator pins. And the other problem I seem to have here is that the screw for the balance, as you can see, is underneath the regulator, which makes no friggin' sense at all, by the way. So either there's something wrong with the regulator, that it's too low, which I doubt, or they used the wrong size screw in here, and that's why I couldn't remove the screw straight up, because this was blocking it and allowing the not allowing the screw to come up. So that's also another fault with this particular watch. So it's funny when people send me a watch, they say, yeah, it works really well, it's just the bead error is wrong or whatever. There's always a ton more problems than they always declare on the watch, whether they know it or not. So this isn't in this case with this individual. The watches, I'd watched a couple of watches from before, and they had their issues because they're old, right? But this one here, some watchmaker likely did that, right? Put the wrong screw in there, and now I've got to figure out how to get this off. I got to take this off here, and then replace, basically take the screw out and find the right screw for this, and or there's a problem with this particular regulator, right? So I don't think there would be. It looks like it's a fine regulator, so I'm not sure. And there's a regulator in all of its glory. And one thing I've known, because I've worked on these type regulators before, is that this little stud here is a positioning stud for this regulator. So that stud allows you to position this and then screw the regulator in place, and then that loops around, as you can see. And as you turn the screw here, it screws it. Basically, if you tighten it, it moves this way, which moves the pins here away from where the stud is, which will speed the watch up. And if you move it the other way, it'll slow the watch down. So S for slow, and the other was F for fast. So if you loosen this, the spring part here pushes down on that arm and allows that to move, which takes the regulator pins and slides them along the hairspring this way, which effectively lengthens the length of the hairspring by moving this towards the stud. So this all works fine. This is all in position. It's this damn screw, I think, is the wrong screw. So I'm going to have a look at that. I can even tell by the head of the screw is not typically they don't look like that. But I may have to take this whole regulator out of here in order to address the screw problem. So we'll have to deal with that. And as you can see, I've got all kinds of action happening here. So here's the movement and its holder, and that's ready to be disassembled. And I've got the parts down here, and I've got this wonderful regulator with the balance cock here, and I've got the balance sitting on a block here, K&D block. It's a vintage block, out of the way. So I'm going to make this part 1.